morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here today. It's great to see such high level of interest in talking about trade and business. When I was out there, I could feel the energy in the room, and I really sort of appreciate this. I have to say, in my presentation, I'm going to touch on the Asian economy and then talk about the China market, which is becoming very important for many of the countries, including New Zealand. Then explain the role of Hong Kong as a gateway to China, as well as a regional hub. Now, I have to say, at this point in time, I'm very pleased to be in this region because we are in better shape than many of the other economies. In the last couple of weeks, we have heard a lot about the debt crisis in Greece, the election in France. Well, things are not that great over there in the Eurozone. And in some other major developed industrial economies, such as the US, things are pretty tough as well. Whereas for us, we still have growth, and we have trade expansion within the region. Now, I don't want to bombard you with too many figures and statistics, but just want to show you an overall picture of the economic growth here. Now, the forecast is the growth momentum will continue. It is easing this year because of what's happening around the world, but next year it's going to pick up again. Looking at region like the ASEAN economy grew by 4.6% last year, and then looking at countries like Indonesia, which is the world's fourth largest, most populated country, it recorded a GDP growth of 6.5% last year. Vietnam, 5.9% last year. Still looking positive. Positive next year. And within the region, trade has been expanding by double digit for a number of years. And now, using Hong Kong as an example, trade has been expanding between Hong Kong and the Asian economies. With ASEAN, last year expanded by 18%. And the exports to like Vietnam grew by 37%, Thailand 23%, Cambodia 20%, not bad. Myanmar, which is sort of emerging as a alternative production base now, is also expanding the trade with Hong Kong. Similar story between China and the Asian sort of economies. Now, China's trade with ASEAN expanded by 24%, reaching over $360 billion US. And in fact, last year, ASEAN has become China's third largest trading partner, overtaking Japan. And according to the vice chairman of China's CCPIT, which is a trade promotion organization, ASEAN will become China's top trading partners within the next 3 years. Now, as I mentioned, China has become and is becoming and will continue to be a major trading partner for many of the economies. And it is growing, it has recorded an impressive growth. But China is changing as well. Before, it was clearly seen as a production base. But now, the middle class is growing. The level of disposable income is rising. Domestic consumption continues to increase. And these figures illustrate a huge potential consumer market in China. Last year, I did a similar presentation, and on my slide, the number of mobile phone users was 747 million. I remember it clearly. And when I updated the slide, now it's more than 900 million. Imagine the amount of products and services that are required. Import of wine grew by over 60% between 2006 and 2010. It is the largest car market in the world, one of the largest markets for luxury products. 100 million Chinese tourists will be traveling by 2020. And let me share with you, in Hong Kong, there are only 7 million people, but last year we had 42 million visitors. Over 60% are from mainland China. And when the mainland Chinese visitors come to Hong Kong, they shop, they dine. And they are they are by far the #1 spender among all the tourists in Hong Kong. And they explain the reasons of the 20% retail sales growth in Hong Kong. On the industrial front, things are also changing. I mean, the Chinese companies are moving up the value chain, engaging in higher value-added services. And as a result, there's a growing demand for business services and technologies. And some of these mainland private enterprises, we call them the MPE, they are not the state-owned entities, have also grown to a substantial size. They are now also coming to Hong Kong, based in Hong Kong, looking for collaboration and investment opportunities with overseas companies. So you can actually meet them in Hong Kong. And last year, China released the 12 five-year plan, and it set very clear direction, such as developing the service industry, upgrading the manufacturing industry, investing more in R&D, innovation, and have a more sustainable growth model. Now, Hong Kong continued to play a vital role in the trade expansion of China. Hong Kong, by far, is the #1 foreign direct investor in China. Many overseas companies choose to be based in Hong Kong when they sort of do business with China for a number of reasons. As you may recall, when Hong Kong was returned to China 15 years ago, it was under the one country, two systems arrangement. And what it means is Hong Kong retained all its autonomy. The legal system is still the common law, which many foreign overseas companies are familiar with. The final court of appeal is in Hong Kong, not in Beijing. There's free flow of information, and there's an open and transparent government with a strong anti-corruption culture, providing a level playing field to overseas companies. I remember a few years ago, I was frequently asked as to whether Shanghai would replace Hong Kong as the financial center. And I think over time, it has proven that Hong Kong remains as China's global financial center, while Shanghai is the domestic financial center. The tax system is still very low and simple. Corporate tax rate, 16.5%, salary tax, 15%, no capital gains tax, no salary, no GST. Last year, there was a survey being done of all the major economies in the world, and Hong Kong is found to be among the bottom 3 in terms of number of taxes and the tax rate, whereas on top of the ladder is France, and then followed by China. Hong Kong also takes advantage of its strategic location, being only 4 hours away, flight away from all the major markets in Asia, and 5 hours flight from half of the world's population. It means it has got very the close proximity for all the major markets. And being located in the southern tip of China, it is within what we call the Pearl River Delta region. Now, there are 3 distinct regions in China. In the south, there is the Pearl River Delta region, PRD, where Hong Kong, Macau, Zhuhai, Guangzhou, they are located. And then in the middle, there's the Yangtze River region, where Shanghai is, and up north, there's the Bohai region, where Beijing is. The Pearl River Delta region is important. It accounts for 1/3 of China's import-export. Many overseas companies, when they first venture into China, they start with the PRD. And Hong Kong companies have also invested setting up factories and operation in the PRD. Similar to New Zealand, Hong Kong also has a free trade agreement with China called the Closer Economic Partnership Arrangement, CEPA, and Hong Kong products enjoy tariff-free status going into China. Now, Hong Kong is not only a gateway to China, it's also a regional hub in Asia. Now, I'll use food and wine as an example because New Zealand has also got a lot of food and wine products. And New Zealand products are seen as high quality and also safe. And so the 100% New Zealand brand pure brand is very much trusted in Hong Kong and China. You may not know that Hong Kong has overtaken the US as the major export region for Japan since 2007, account for 20% of Japan's food export. Now, of course, with only 7 million people, we can't consume it all. 90% of the food import into Hong Kong is re-exported. 1/3 goes into China. So you can actually sell to China through Hong Kong. Food and wine always go together. Oh, okay. In 2008, Hong Kong government removed the wine duty, and there are a number of measures, and Hong Kong is well positioned to take advantage of the wine consumption growth in Asia. As you can see, in terms of wine, the consumption, I mean, is declining in Europe, slowing in US. The only bright spot is in Asia. And since the removal of wine duty, New Zealand wine exports to Hong Kong has increased by 188%. And 40% of the wine imports into Hong Kong is re-exported, again, the trading platform. Now, I don't have enough time to cover, I mean, the other role of Hong Kong with logistics, financial services, and all that. And by now, you probably have heard enough about Hong Kong, and I've got the dong-dong already. So, to you, you may ask, what does it mean for me as a business? Well, I would encourage you to think that, I mean, of the bigger market out there. And for many companies, you may look at the opportunities out there beyond the domestic market. For a global company, most of the times they'll just keep their strategic development piece in their home market. The other business activities can be somewhere else. It doesn't have to be Hong Kong or China. It can be Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand. But I guess look at the different options and choose a business model that suits your business. Looking ahead, I don't have a crystal ball, but the outlook is relatively positive in this region. For some companies, they may have to rebalance and don't rely so much on the traditional markets, such as the US and European market. And one thing I do want to sort of mention or stress is while we are tapping into the growth, it's also important to keep in mind that the growth should be inclusive and sustainable. And we don't want to have the widening disparity between the haves and the have-nots. To finish off, I just want to mention that at the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, our role is to promote bilateral trade. So we can help companies, New Zealand companies, to sell or export to Hong Kong and China, or to source product and services through our services, the trading platforms. The last thing I want to mention is in September, my office, is expecting food and wine logistics mission coming from Hong Kong and China. So we are bringing a group of Hong Kong and Chinese companies to New Zealand. And there are a number of objectives, including sourcing food and wine products, looking for collaboration opportunities. And if you are interested to know more, please contact myself. And here are my contact details. Thank you.
Bonnie, thank you so much for that. And what we now have is 10 minutes or so for questions and discussion from the floor. There are people out there, I believe, it's a bit hard to see, who are going to prowl around with microphones. So if you do want to ask a question and make a comment, could you please just put your hand up quite high so they can see it and get it to you. And while they're getting organised, Bonnie, maybe if I could ask you a starter for 10, and that is that when New Zealand organisations are engaged with, doing business with, involved in various relationships with organisations in Hong Kong, what are the main factors that we need to take into consideration when we're doing that? What are the important characteristics that we need to demonstrate?
I think for New Zealand companies, the challenges are, for example, the production capacity. For most of the SMEs, they have limited productions of capacity, so they can only produce so much. So when I talk to many of them, they also always have the concern, well, I won't be able to supply to China. And that's why, I encourage them to go through Hong Kong and explain to them, you don't need to sell to the whole of China. China is very big. All you need to do is to find maybe a distributor or a business partner in Hong Kong who will sort of just find a niche sector that suits your products, or a market that's, your product will be well received, and just sell to that market. And the other thing is, don't try to compete in the lower end. We have such high quality products here. Aim at the premium, and then find your niche. And then look for a partner to work with, and then just sell through that partner. I think this is one of the major sort of challenges.
Thank you. Right, questions from the floor, please. Over here. Oh, sorry, right at the back there. My apologies for not being able to identify individuals. It's actually it's quite dark out there.
The spotlight is
and
very...
so please forgive me if I'm sort of peering at you in an unfortunate manner, but it's unintentional.
That's much
Well,
better,
thanks.
actually.
Ah.
All right, well, thank you very much, Bonnie, for that great presentation. I just wanted to ask, with the delegates you're bringing to New Zealand, are they just going to be looking at the North Island? Because I'm from Christchurch, and that's the base for agriculture. And secondly, there's plenty of opportunities in retail and property investment to rebuild the city. How could we work together with foreign investors who have money there while also building opportunities to get products out of here and rebuild our city back there? Or in other words, could they even come to Christchurch?
So the question is whether the mission will go to Christchurch. Now, I mean, let me explain to you. I mean, with Hong Kong, we are aiming for the decision makers from the top Hong Kong companies to come. And when I first proposed the program, and I have to say, first of all, they haven't come to this region for the last 7-8 years. And when I first proposed, they say, okay, we have 5 days, and we want to go to both Australia and New Zealand. So I stretched my, okay, and then I tried to put the program together, and at this point in time, I'm very glad to say that I have managed to convince them to only come to New Zealand and cut the Australian leg. So don't tell my Aussie contacts. And for, I mean, the thing is because, I mean, for Hong Kong companies, time is the essence. So they want, I mean, when they come, they do want to achieve the most within the 5 days. And I want to minimize their travel, and I want them to use the time effectively to meet with companies here, have the face-to-face meetings, to have a better understanding of what we have got to offer here. Which means that, unfortunately, I won't be able to bring them to all the different regions and cities in New Zealand. But I'll try to bring the companies and also the different agencies, associations, to get them to have meaningful dialogue, and also do the preparation beforehand. Because there's no point just to have hundreds of people in the room. I mean, I'll probably do the qualifying, what the requirements are, the interests are, and then match them up so that they can have meaningful dialogue and to have a positive outcome. So I'm sorry, it's a long answer to your question, which is no, unfortunately, they're not going to Christchurch. But I hope you understand we are under a lot of constraints, and we are trying to do the best. And I need a lot of help as well in order to, it's catch-22, in order to attract the top decision makers to come, I have to have a good program. If I just want to bring them to, to see another farm or these top, decision makers, they have traveled around the world. They've seen a lot of things. I need to showcase them what New Zealand has got to offer that is different from the other regions, and why our products are so good.
Thank you. Any more? Right over here.
Just got a question around what sort of companies which you think have done a really good job in Hong Kong which are coming out of New Zealand, and what can we learn from them?
Sorry.
So can you give us some examples on what sort of companies which have come out of New Zealand and which are exporting to China, and they have done a really good job at that, and what other New Zealand companies can learn from them?
New Zealand companies?
Yes.
I think a very good example is Comvita. Comvita first started in Hong Kong with one person, a one-man band. And of course, they're very persistent. They keep sort of building up the relationship. And now they have got, I lost count because they are expanding so fast in the last few years. They have got their own stores. They have got outlets in many of the supermarkets, and they are doing very well in Hong Kong. And they are a typical example of using Hong Kong, and then emerging into going into China. The thing is, as I sort of have met with them, and they are speaker at many of our functions as well. They found that it's very, useful to using Hong Kong also for their test marketing. Like before, because with China, it's so big. Whereas, if you want to just test your your product to see whether it suits the Chinese sort of consumers, in Hong Kong, it's because it's small and it's much easier to control. So you do your test marketing there, see whether the product suits the consumers, whether the packaging should be modified, and then refine it before venturing into the wider China market. So that's another sort of lesson or experience shared by the New Zealand company.
Thank you. Down the front here, Don. Could I just ask, and I should have mentioned before that if you ask a question, could you just say your name and where you're from?
Don Ray, I'm the market manager for India for New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. I've actually got two questions, Bonnie. What's your commentary about the economic state in the inland, western, northern areas outside Chongqing, for example? We know Chongqing's a very large city inland. We know there's not many New Zealand businesses doing that. And the second question is directly to do with my connection with India. What's the connection between Hong Kong and India? Can you comment on those two things, please?
Sorry, the first question again is...
The western northern areas inland from Chongqing.
Yeah.
What's the state of the economy there? We know that the Pearl River Delta's thriving, Shanghai's thriving, Beijing's thriving, Bohai. What about inland and north? Is there an opportunity there, do you think?
They are also growing. And to be honest, when we look at sort of China, we sort of tend to sort of look at, talk about like tier 1 cities, where like Shanghai, Beijing, they're the tier 1 cities. And then the tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. And to be honest, sometimes it's easier to get into a tier 2 or tier 3 cities because for cities like Shanghai, it's very competitive because many overseas companies, whether it's from the US, from the European region, they are there. So for some companies, it makes sense for them to explore the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And there are opportunities because the purchasing power is also increasing. And it's also the mainland government's policy to almost like drive the investment into those cities as well, so that it's more balanced. Again, back to the widening disparity. We don't want to see that happen. So the Chinese government is also making conscious effort driving the investment businesses into those tier 2, tier 3 cities, and the purchasing power is increasing there. Your second question is about the trade between Hong Kong and India. Unfortunately, I don't have it on top of my head. I have to say that I can't remember all the figures with each individual country, but I can definitely get back to you.
That's great, thanks.
I think we've got time for one more. Oh.
Good morning, Trevor Elia from Kiwi Fresh Group. Hello, Don. Could you be a little more specific, going back to the trade mission, the prospective trade mission, could you be a little more specific as to what criteria you'd be looking for from prospective candidates to meet with that mission?
Now, of course, I will need to gather the input from the delegation. At this stage, we haven't got the final list of delegates. But we are, as I say, I'm aiming for the top food importers, the logistics companies, and also the wine importers in Hong Kong. They will be looking at, have a better understanding of what products we have got to offer here. And I have to say, with New Zealand products, seafood, dairy products, like we have got very good sort of organic products here as well. And they also want to understand the trend. When I say trend, is say I understand with like kiwi fruit, there has been development, not just, well, now besides the green, the gold is now the the sweet green, and there's also the development of red kiwi fruit. And so it's something that I think the delegation will be interested to know as well, so that they can almost like plan ahead. And also the implications, understand the implications of logistics services of when we transport all these products, especially for food. How can we make sure that, I mean, the food is transported to the end users or the distribution chain without the damage, without, and keeping it fresh and all that. So these are the different things that they were looking at. So.